Andy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. I feel like
um,
I've been here for a week.
yeah. My goodness me. Great. It's really good to.
We're having a great time already.
We are. We've been talking about YouTube rabbit holes and how to get rid of
Yeah,
hiccups.
yeah, yeah. That's productive.
I love it.
Watch out,
Um,
bro.
Andy, thanks for making the time tonight
Yeah, thanks for having me.
to be on the show and for us to hear your journey because I'm
Yeah,
really interested to hear your journey as dad. Um, so I wonder, can you give us a little bit of a overview as to how you became uh, a dad, a special needs dad?
yeah. Wow. Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to make a long story pretty short so that we can cover other topics. But basically, I met my wife, Veronica. Uh, it's at least I think 8 years ago now, 9 years ago, and we dated for a very long time, and that whole time, our initial plans had been no marriage, no kids. Like that was our set path. We were just going to kind of be together forever, and we were okay with that. And then some issues in our family medically, both with her mom and my mom, came up that required significant attention, pretty traumatic stuff that once we got through, we kind of like had this life altering type of experience that I think some people do in those situations where we kind of changed our view. And I remember it vividly. One night we were walking into a restaurant here at home, and she asked me in the parking lot. Uh, Aside from, I like to gamble, so she knows how to speak my language of like over unders and all these things. And we were walking into this restaurant to have a drink after a dinner, and she said, "Hey," just randomly out of the blue, she said, "Hey, over under, would you ever want to have kids percentage wise?" And in that moment, I was like, definitely over 50%. And she's like, "How much over 50%?" And I was like, "I don't know, like 70, 80, 90%." I'm like, I think I would really like to have a kid. And she was like, "Oh, like I feel the same." And so I remember that night we talked at the bar while we were having that drink, and she was just kind of like, "Okay, well, let's just go have a kid." And I was like, I'm like, "Well, I'm totally good with that, but for like all the legalese involved with like being a dad and like, that all the rights and things that I want to, heaven forbid anything happens. Like, I never plan on divorcing my wife. I hope she never dies, like all these things, right? But
Yeah,
like
yep.
life happens, right? And so I was like, I would really like to get married and then have a child. And she was like, fine. Like, so that's, totally on board with that. So we had a very small wedding and did it our way. It was great. It was in my mom's backyard. Her grandmother married us, did all that. Um, and so then we spent basically a year kind of being married, 8 or 9 months, basically being married, and started trying to have a baby after that. And so that would have been the end of 2018. So December of 2018, we basically started trying. And we tried. Veronica's known so many people, and I've known so many people that have struggled with pregnancy and just getting pregnant.
Mm.
And it's something that's like, near and dear to us in the sense that we appreciate how wonderful an opportunity that is, right? And it is
Mm.
not as easy as people think it is. It's not just go get pregnant and that's just how it works, right? So
Yep.
we were always very cognizant of that, and we were just hopeful that we would get lucky enough to do it. And so the first go around, the first month we did the tests and everything, and it didn't happen. I remember Veronica being really really sad, and we went up to Michigan. We have a house in Michigan, and we went up there by ourselves, and we tied one on pretty good that that weekend, just kind of like feeling sorry for ourselves, which is ridiculous because people try for like years and years and years. Like this is our first month, and we're like in the dumps about it, and we're
Yeah.
already ready to get like me tested. Like on Monday, that Monday, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna get tested, like see if it's my fault, like what's going on, blah blah
Right.
blah. And then um like that following couple weeks or whatever, I came home, um, and she had the pregnancy test and we were pregnant. And it was like right away. It
Oh,
was like, I think our second or third month. Like we were so lucky, so blessed.
wow.
It was amazing. And so that like started our journey. And so we had a very typical pregnancy. We went in for all the checkups. We, the baby was fine, growing, perfectly healthy. We had one instance where they thought they saw some like artery outside of the heart, but that was just because Riley was like moving around a lot. And so we ended up uh, meeting the guy that ended up turning out to be her pediatric uh, cardiologist. He did her follow up just to make sure, and she was like, "Oh, okay, good to go, no problems there." And we didn't do any prenatal testing at all. They offered,
Right.
we didn't.
Okay.
We were pretty indifferent about it. We were
Yep.
like, just kind of figure it out. Um, and so yeah, the pregnancy went along, and November 11th, 2019, Veronica woke up. She was that poor thing. She was up for like 10 hours or something all night, like having contractions,
Oh,
letting me
wow.
sleep for some reason, just at home, because she knew like they were so far apart that we would have just gone to the hospital and they either would have sent us home or we would have just sat there. And so she was like, I'm just gonna
Gotcha.
like tough this out and let him sleep because it could be a lot longer. So she's a angel for that. And then all of a sudden I remember at like 6:30 in the morning, she's like, "Hey, wake up." She's like, "We gotta go." And I'm like, "Whoa, okay, it's time." Like we shot up, ran out the door, got to the hospital. And I think she was in labor for like 20 hours or
Oh
something.
my God.
Riley forever. Like
Oh, oh
she
my
wasn't
God.
pushing that
What,
long, but she was like in labor that long. Like it
God.
just it was taking forever for her to like dilate and all that stuff. So yeah, so we're there, and they got me way more involved with the birth than I was expecting at all. Um, and then yeah, Riley arrived, and I'm smiling like so much about it now. And I'm gonna try to be as candid as I possibly can
Yeah.
be
Yep. Yep. Go for it, man.
um, with all this. So yeah, so she came out and she was, like any kid looks when they come out, is really kind of gross and all that stuff. And she was a girl. We didn't know if she
Yeah.
was. Yeah, we didn't find out the sex, so it was
Oh,
it
okay. So
was
there was a whole big surprise whether it was boy or girl.
whole total
Yep.
surprise. We said there's very few
Wow.
surprises left in life,
Good
right?
on you for
Very
doing
few
that.
things that you,
Good on you.
you get to be truly, truly surprised in, and
Yeah.
and that was one of them. So that was cool. Um, and then yeah, they brought her over on the warmer and she's warming up and everything like that. And like literally 15 minutes after she was born, the doctor comes back in and is like, "Hey, we think she has, quite a few of the markers for Down syndrome. We're going to test her. She's healthy. She's beautiful, blah, blah, blah." And
Were
then
you
they
guys?
kind of just like,
Were you guys together at that time, or was it just you?
we were in the room together. I was with
Right.
Riley in the warmer, and Veronica was kind of like finishing everything up. Like it was, I mean, and we can get into like talking about like how they deliver that news and all that stuff and how that goes. I mean, I don't, we've,
Do you,
I don't know.
well, do you think that like I think there could be people, there could be pediatricians listening to this, and people who actually are in that field.
Yeah,
Do you, how it was delivered to you, like the
yeah,
news,
yeah.
um, for you personally, was
Hmm.
it was it like was it done the right way? Do you think?
Wow. I would say no. My first gut
Mm,
instinct is no. I don't think it was the right
mm,
way, but I don't have the answer to what is the right way.
yeah. Okay. Yep.
Um, because I don't, I've certainly read stories of people that, didn't find out that their child had Down syndrome for days right
Mm,
after.
mm,
And and I think definitely doing it like if you haven't had the prenatal testing and all those things, like doing it as soon as possible makes sense. But like it was like 15 minutes after. I mean, it was like we were right in the
mm,
thick of it. Like I'm pretty sure she was still like finishing up everything, and like
yep.
they were just like, "Hey, here's this situation," and we're like, "Holy cow!" Um, so I don't know. I don't know the right way,
Yeah.
but I don't think it was the right way just because maybe of the immediacy of it,
Okay.
because that is just such a high emotion and stress moment as it is. And then to deliver huge, gigantic news
Mm.
about your child,
Yeah.
um, that will turn out to be the most amazing thing, but you do not know that in the moment. they
No,
don't
no, that's
they
right.
don't tell you that, and unless you have already had experience with someone with Down syndrome
Mm.
in your life previously, right? Which I did not, other than passings and random interactions with people. Um, that's a hard thing to take in, I think,
Yeah.
with everything else going on, right? Um, and again, with hindsight being crystal clear in 2020, it's the most amazing thing ever, and it's Riley, and
Mm.
it was the day she was born, and that's all that I think about it now.
Yeah, yeah.
Honestly, that little segment of it is such a granular, tiny piece of what I remember of that
Yeah.
moment now, because of what everything that's happened with her and who she is. But yeah, that's a really tough one. It's
But that
it's
was the
so
point though, wasn't that that was the point, Andy, where kind of things like um where things did change for you and your wife.
yeah.
That's that to be honest about it, that's where it like that 15 minutes after the birth was when um things went a different direction in a way,
Hmm?
didn't they? From the
Yeah,
typical from where it typically
yeah.
go. And I think that's um how was your like at that time, what did what did you and your wife think? Can you like what was the conversation that went on after that?
Yeah. Huh. So my wife is in special education. She teaches and helps children with that are deaf and hard of hearing. So goes from school to school because not all our schools like have the capacity for all that, just because they're small contingents of students. So that's what she does. So she's had like experience in it, but it's not like her. It's she's not like day to day dealing with people like with Down syndrome or with any syndrome. I mean, like some of the kids do have those things, but it's not like that's what she's doing. She's replacing,
Mm-hmm.
hearing aids and working on them with some of their work and language things like that. So, but I think she was. I think we wrapped our heads around it very, very quickly because it was just about this healthy baby that we were lucky enough to have. But you're absolutely right that in that moment, you're and everybody, I think, as a parent or to be a parent has this idea of like what life is going to be. Everybody, right? Like you have this
Mm, yeah,
imaginary
yeah,
destination and this vision of what you and your wife's life and your kids' lives are going to be and what they're going to do and who they're going to be and all these things. And all of us couldn't be more wrong about that, whether you have a kid that has some sort of disability or some sort of whatever versus a typical kiddo, right?
yeah,
You
yeah.
have no idea what your kid's going to be, right? like
No,
you know like crazy people, crazy, that's a terrible word. Serial killers have parents too, right? Like I don't know, like who knows what your kid's going to turn out to be. But you have this idea, and then it is instantaneously the moment that your child is born, like shattered, right? Like it's
mm,
like this is not ever going to be this way.
mm,
And but I also now disagree with how I thought about that, right? It's not that it's not going to be that way. It's just going to be a different way. And you
mm,
and you at least we've come to believe that like that was never our decision in the first place, right?
mm,
Riley's life's
mm.
going to be Riley's life. It was always going to be Riley's life. She's going to make decisions for herself, and she's going to, whether it was one way or another, right?
Yeah,
Whether she could speak or couldn't speak, whether all those different things, right?
yeah.
It's going to be her life. And I think in that moment it was this like this warp speed of, I definitely had a moment of just like sadness. I did. Like I'll say it, like I had a moment of sadness, and I'm embarrassed and ashamed at this point to have had that moment. But I'm a human being, and I I'm okay with that. Like I've come to terms with that, and that's my thing to deal with. But it's it's looking back on it, it's just such a shame that that was a feeling that I had in that moment, because I'm so happy now, and I've been
Mm.
so happy ever since that moment. Um,
It's that
to
shock, though, isn't it? It's the shock.
oh God,
I think that
I mean, how can it not be?
the shock of being told is immense, and I think that that's something that is there any good way of is there any not good way or right way of doing this? And I think you alluded to that, like well, I feel like I was told maybe wrong, but what is the right way to be kind of told this kind of news, right? Because it's yeah, I mean, um, I don't know whether you heard the um how I explained it, but the doctor kind of pulled me aside and said to me, this is probably I know not so long after Joey was born,
Hmm.
um, and he pulled me aside and he said, this is in Japan here, and he said, uh, so just uh, I think he asked me if there were any did we in my family were there any kind of people with any kind of conditions or anything like that, and I was like, no, I don't think so. And on your wife's side, no, I don't think so. Okay, well, we suspect that your child may have Down syndrome. Not sure. We're just checking, running a few tests on it. And but the thing that he said the most that always sticks with me, he said, "Yes, can you please maybe not tell your wife, or don't tell your wife." um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
of course, if there's any doctors, pediatricians out there, um, it's probably I would say one of the worst things to say. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe there is a wife that you shouldn't be telling. Maybe like, but I'd say general rule of thumb um, is that that's probably not a good thing to be doing. Is saying that
Right.
because there will be dads who will not tell their wives and they will just sit on that. And from a dad's perspective, um, like holding on to that kind of news can be like that's massive. Like just holding on to that, and how long do you hold on to that for? Like because that's like that's traumatic news essentially,
Right.
and life changing news. So, of course, I went and told my wife straight away. I just told
Right. Of course. Yeah.
her, and I think they were a little bit surprised actually when Junko told them that she knew. They were like, I think there was a bit of they were a bit surprised, which
Yeah.
was that's. But anyway, everyone has these different experiences, right?
Hmm.
Of when they were told about it, whether it's pre-birth, after birth, like day one, day five, whatever,
Right.
and that's when the journey of kind of acceptance really starts. Um, and I suppose it's I never thought it was a journey, Andy. I never thought that acceptance was a journey. I thought, yeah, I got it. Like
Hmm.
I I that's cool. Jamie's got Down syndrome. Boom, lock it in. No problem at all. Um, but 11 years later, um, I was really wrong, and I hadn't accepted it. I hadn't dealt with it. So I
Hmm.
suppose, I'm asking you, like, um, what is the journey of acceptance? Because you're right, Riley. How old is Riley now? She's now three.
Almost 3.5.
Yeah,
Should be 3.5 next month.
3.5. So the journey of acceptance for you with Riley, um, how is that? We're going quite deep, quite quickly here. I
Yeah.
do
No. Hey,
apologize. I do
let's dive in.
apologize, mate.
I'm an open book. I'm an open book. So.
How has that challenged you as a dad?
Yeah.
What does it look like?
So I think that um, we were talking at the beginning of the show about how my wife is very much the optimist and the open person, open arms, and I'm
Mm.
very much the cynic and the kind of a glass half full, prove it to me type of person. And I think for me, it was just the reality, right? Like there was, and like you said, I think the full acceptance of it is a journey, right? Because
Yeah.
it does come
Mm.
like I think right now we're very much in a phase where it's hitting us square in the face, like when she's at daycare and stuff. Like when they're little, like they're behind, but they're kind of right there. And like even some of the kids that they hang out with, maybe even like somewhat delayed like they are, but she's 3.5 now, and like kids that she's in class with are like full blown talking, saying
Right.
conversations, right? And she's just now, we're working on 3-word phrases. We're just now starting to like express ourselves verbally with like one word, right? And like all these other things. And like she's speaking. We are so lucky that she's going to be able to talk and she's going to be able to communicate with us and like all that. But it's hitting us right in the face, right? Like it's right there in front of us. Like, she's we got her in swimming class now and like she's kicking butt in it. But like, yeah, the other kids are like, kicking their feet and all this stuff. And like, she's kind of just figuring out what's going on there and all that. And she'll get it. And it'll take her time and her journey and her path. And it's always been that way.
Yeah.
But it's, there are moments in time where it just kind of like creeps back up. You think you're good and you're like, this is fine. This is life. DS, it is what it is. Like that's Riley, that's my girl, and that's all she is. And that is what it is
Mm.
99.999% of the time. But then there's those occasions where it does like come creeping right back into your face and you go, yeah, this is going to be a different path for us, right?
Mm.
And I don't know what that path is going to ultimately look like, and no one knows what that is. But I think that acceptance is just this journey. But I was able to, in the moment that we were given the diagnosis, not that moment, but pretty soon, close after, just because I got to hold her and she was my baby and we were safe and she was safe, and well, for the moment. And then she got taken up to the NICU for 30 days. But
Ah,
um,
okay, right. So she was rushed up to the, or not rushed up. She was
kind
taken.
of, yeah, we can jump into that in a sec. I'll make a note of the NICU stay. I have a little side note thing just because I
Right.
wander sometimes.
Let's talk
Um,
about that. We'll go into that in a minute because I think that's always a really good thing to talk about and hear from a
yeah,
dad's
yeah.
perspective.
But it was just, I think, in that moment going, okay, well, this is my baby, and she
Mm.
just so happens to have Down syndrome, so that's life.
Mm.
And now we need to move on and figure out what it means to have Down syndrome. How do we provide her the best possible services and life? And like, I don't know, I just jump into action mode because that's who I am. Like it that relieves my stress is like solving problems.
Mm.
Um, and not that it was like a problem to solve, it was just like, okay, like what's the next step, like now what,
Mm.
right? Where you're not even given a blueprint with a typical kiddo. Now you've got this kid that like you didn't know was going to have, these other accommodations and needs and all these things that now you have to go figure that out. And I we're so lucky that we came to that sort of acceptance so quickly, I think, because it allowed us to move so quickly in her favor for her early intervention services and getting her in physical therapy literally when she was like 2 months old, and
Mm.
speech and hearing because she's deaf in one ear, and all these different things where we've heard stories of parents that just like, and I understand like the shock and trauma where they're just like checked out for 6 months, eight
Mm.
months, a year, and not getting the services and not doing the things that they have access to, that all those
Mm.
things that the kiddo can benefit from because of the lack of acceptance or because of whatever number of things that are happening because of the diagnosis and all of that. And I'm so lucky that I have a partner that was so strong like that with me, and that we were able to lean on each other and just look at each other and go, this is Riley, this is our baby, and she happens to have Down syndrome, and that's our life now. And what do we do to make her still have the best possible life that we want her to have, that we want any of our
Mm.
children,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't change in our mind. It didn't change. But was it a shock? Yeah. Like I threw up. Like I'll admit that. Like I went into the bathroom 2 minutes after they told me, and I threw up.
Right. Okay.
And
So
I'm like
yeah.
totally ashamed about that. And like, it's totally something that I'm not proud of, but it happened. Like, cause I was not expecting that. Like
Yeah.
nothing leading up to that was like, they didn't see. So she has a small hole in her heart, like it's cleared up. She didn't even need to have surgery, but like they didn't even see that like in any of her echoes leading up. Like, so
Mm.
none of the no indicators were there for us. So like it just came out of the blue and was like boom,
So it's
like
just like
here.
this. Yeah.
And you're just like, what? And so yeah, so it was very shocking, but we were lucky to be accepting that, that quickly, having that kind of acceptance. And um yeah, that's and but it's a journey. It's every day
Mm.
you think you're good with it, and most days it's fine. And then some days you're just like, okay, I forgot about that. And it's good that I forgot about it, but
Yeah.
at the same time you're like, okay, she has Down syndrome and we still have to remember that, and
Yeah.
it's part of our life. It is.
Yeah. Let's go to the Niku
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And so she was taken up upstairs or downstairs, wherever this was.
Yeah.
And when they obviously said to you, she needs to go into Niku.
Yeah.
Um, and what was the I guess this was because of the well actually what was the reason that she was in there for?
Yeah, so oddly enough, it was funny when we were doing hospital tours. The one that we ended up picking when we were doing the hospital tour was like mentioning how they have a stage 4 NICU. It's like brand new, and they're like, we're one of the only ones like in the country that can do all these different things. And we were like, we'll never need that. That's nice, thanks, great, thumbs up, but we'll be fine. Like that
Yeah.
doesn't matter to us. Thank God we ended up there. And I would advocate to anybody listening, or hospital folks or whatever, like tell patients like don't overlook that, because you just don't know
Mm,
what could happen. And so Riley was with us the first night, and she was with us, and we were all well and good.
right.
And then yeah, and then they came in like first thing in the morning after her first night, and the doctor was like, "We just want to send her upstairs to look at her breathing. We're a little concerned about it, and she'll be fine. She should be there like a couple days.
Right.
You guys go home, come back. We'll get you all set up." And thankfully, again, it was this nice place. We had our own like room and all this stuff. Like we could stay over there. So 3 or 4 days turned into 28 days.
Wow.
And they couldn't initially figure out what was going on with her. Her oxygen levels were just like not strong enough. They were in like the
Mm,
mid 80s,
right.
and she just like wasn't like breathing well. Um, and so they couldn't really figure out what was going on. And what after a while, and enough like poking and prodding and testing and all these other things, she had both pulmonary hypertension, um, because of the hole in her heart, and just because Riley was according to her physical therapist, one of the lowest muscle tone kids that she's ever seen.
Mm.
Um, which thank goodness she didn't tell us that when she first met us, because that'd have been a sad place to start for us. But
No, that was good. So
um,
she kind of held that back a bit.
yeah, she did. But so the pulmonary hypertension, just because of her lack of development, and then she was also aspirating when she was feeding, so her food was going down into her lungs, because again she just
Mm,
wasn't strong enough. So it was literally just a function of keeping her there long enough till she was strong enough to do all those things.
gotcha.
And it finally did get to a point though where we got frustrated, and I did tell the doctors, I'm like, just take her off the oxygen for a half a day. I'm like, I want to see if she can do it, because they were really delicate with her, and I appreciate that, but I was also like, she's a strong kid. Like, let's see what she can do. We've been here
Right.
for 28 days. She doesn't need surgery. She doesn't, we're taking up a bed that I don't think is needed here. I think she's
Mm,
ready to go. And lo and behold, like literally she was fine, and we were out the door within 24 hours. Um,
mm.
and never looked back. And it was great. And
Interesting.
again, they were amazing people. Like they were wonderful people, but I just think they were being a little too cautious at some point. And I was like, she's fine. Like we got it figured out. And that being said, like we had to thicken her bottles for months after she got home, so that she wasn't
Right.
aspirating until she could, we knew she wasn't doing that anymore, and we had to test her and do all those things, and the dyes, and tons of tests, so many tests and so many doctors, right? Like right away
Yep.
you're going to the cardiologist, and you're going to there and here and there and everywhere, and the pulmonologist, and they're all wonderful people, and our specialists are like the most amazing, and we're
Well, it's
so lucky.
tiring though, isn't it? Though.
It was exhausting. It
because
was absolutely exhausting
literally, it feels like you're continuously um, going everywhere,
everywhere.
and and you know, with your uh, whether you can actually get away from your job, or you have that flexibility or not, is that's a whole another challenge that we deal with, right? Um,
Yeah.
and of course, someone's got to go. And if and what did it look like for you guys? Like, were you both able to go? Was your work kind of you know flexible? Did they understand? How was that?
Yeah, I mean, work was flexible, but Veronica drove that bus like entirely. Like she was the heart and soul of being in the NICU and like taking care of us as a family there and like taking care of Riley there. Like I would go to work, um, and I would come before work and I would go after work. We didn't stay there actually because our house is literally 5 minutes down the road from the hospital.
Mm,
And the nurses there were the most amazing people. NICU nurses, I mean, nurses in general are incredible people, but NICU nurses, my God, like they are
mm.
the most incredible people on the planet and should all have raises and everything. And they took such good care of Riley. And so basically, like I would go in the morning, I'd be there with her, I'd read to her, we would hang out, I'd give her her morning bottle, I'd go to work, I'd leave work, I'd come give her an evening bottle, and we'd put her down together and all that. And that was our life for 28 days. But
Mm,
during that 28 days, we also would go home and we would eat dinner and we would watch a show that was on TLC called Born This Way. And
mm,
Born This Way is a TV show about a bunch of like 20 something, uh, like young adults with Down syndrome. And they're living in California together, like some of them independent, some of them dependent on each other, whatever, or dependent on AIDS and things like that. And it's just a reality show about their lives. And I'll tell you, part of the journey of acceptance that played a huge role was just
mm,
like having that in my face of like, wow, like all these people are living independently. They have jobs. They are doing all these wonderful things. They are well-spoken adults that like are out in the community and like just like every other person, right? Like, and so it was this like cathartic thing that we would do every night that we would get home and we'd watch like a couple episodes of that and go
mm,
like this it was soothing for us in a weird way of being like this unknown, right? We always fear the unknown.
mm,
And I had no idea. Veronica had some idea of what Down syndrome was, certainly way more than I did, but not nearly what most experts or people that live the life of people with Down syndrome have. And I
mm,
had none, right? I,
mm.
I was operating on zero. So for me, I'm an analytical person. I dove into the analytics and the books and the
Okay.
articles, all the things. But then to have this just clear cut picture of like here's a reality show and it's like 5 seasons long. um and these people are doing amazing things and they're doing speeches and they're motivational speakers and they're one kid's a rap artist and like all these things. And it was really nice. It was
Mm.
part of the journey of acceptance, right? It was
Yeah.
part of
Okay.
that whole process for
Yeah.
us. And so that was our NICU experience. And it was I listened to so many songs with Riley and I just played her so much music and we read so many books because all I wanted to do was just like talk to her and speak to her, just like get language into her brain because I knew she was always going to be just like the smartest little chick because she was so tough. And I just wanted her to know like that we were there and we were there for her and like we weren't going anywhere. Um and so that was our days and it stunk. It was awful. Um because it was this never ending thing. It wasn't, I think, I'm so thankful every day that we didn't have the surgery piece of it that most other families do with the heart or anything like that. Like we didn't have that. We were so lucky. But our NICU stay was just this open end. It was like, well, when she gets better, when
Mm,
she can breathe better, when she's
mm.
strong enough, and we're like, well, when's that gonna be, right? And again, we were there for 28 days. There's people there for 6 months when they have preemies and stuff like that. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't
Yeah.
imagine, couldn't fathom that. Um, but that was it was tough. It was tough, and again, I think just our family and friends were all there for us. Like we just had such a great support system. We still do, and
Mm.
like we're so lucky. Like we do, you can't if you have that, and you have to take advantage of it because it's there. Because so many people don't have that, that would give anything to have it,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and if you have people in your life that love you and love your family and are willing to help you in those types of moments, like lean on them because it does make it easier. It's easy. Everybody wants to be strong and nobody wants to like burden other people, but those are the types of things that like it was so helpful to us.
Thanks for sharing that, mate. Appreciate that, Andy. It's like,
Yeah.
and you know, that how alone in that time, in that kind of um 28 days there, how alone did you feel as a dad? Like, yeah, how alone did you feel in that journey? Kind of, you're obviously going through with your wife. She is with you, but how
Yeah.
alone did you feel? As in, like, I don't feel like, I don't know. Did you feel you had anyone that you could, sit down with and say, man, this is what's going on, you know, and just unloading.
Yeah. Uh Not, I mean, no. So I am in therapy now. I've been in therapy for a few years now. I encourage therapy. I think it's a wonderful
Great.
thing. Um, I wasn't at the time. I wish I had been. God, I wish I had been in therapy at the time. That would have been great. Um, but uh, yeah, I felt really lonely. I mean, lonely in the sense of like I just didn't have anybody that like could relate to it, right? Like everybody
Mm,
was there and empathetic to Riley just being in the NICU, right? And like everybody, and that was the other thing, like everybody in our family and friends and all that stuff were just so excited. And like nobody was like, oh, I'm so sorry that she has Down syndrome. Like nobody, made those comments or anything. Everybody was like, oh, that's great. Like, but we're sorry she's in the hospital. Like, is there
mm,
anything that we can do? And we hope she gets better. So like we felt supported in that sense,
mm,
but you
mm.
do feel like you're on this island, right? Like where you're like, well, I think when we talked the first time on the phone, it's like, you look across the sea and it's just a different country, right? And it
Mm,
is. It's like
mm.
you're just looking over there going like, and the other weird thing was we have a lot of friends that had kids around that time and like are still like we're all having kids like
Yeah, right,
so all
right.
our friends are having these typical kiddos and then like we hit the lottery and in the most amazing way it turns out but um it's just different and
Yeah.
those people don't know how to relate, right? And like we have
No.
a couple of friends that have some kiddos with some diagnosed autism and things like that they have their own um you know differences in life and things that they have to get through and challenges and all that. So we definitely have support systems in that, but I felt alone. I mean, I come from a single parent household. It was just me and my mom forever growing
Mm.
up. Never known my father, so I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants anyway. Like I don't
Yeah,
even
that's
know how to
interesting.
do the
Okay.
dad thing.
Yeah, okay.
um,
Let's can I just talk about that a little bit because I think
yeah, sure.
that that's a really, I'm glad you said that, and I appreciate you've said that as well because as as a dad, as we model a lot what we do on what what we were shown growing up, and you said just now, you alluded to that, is that it was just you and your mum. You
Mhm.
don't remember your dad. So was it what did it look like for you trying to what did you call on to for yourself to kind of be like, okay, this is what dad is.
I think just wow. I guess I never looked at it as like this is what dad is. I think I've always just looked at it as like this is what a loving parent is. And
Mm,
like this is the type of parent I want to be. I never looked
mm,
at it as like I want to be this type of dad. I just want to be a good human and a good parent to my kids. Love them
mm,
and and teach them to be good people too, right? I think, my mom like the biggest rule in our house was just the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you want done to yourself. It's
mm.
pretty simple and self-explanatory and there's a lot of gray in life. It isn't always that simple, but it's pretty close to that, right? Like just put kindness and goodness out into the world, and like hopefully that gets, sent back your way, and sprinkle in a healthy dose of cynicism, and like, you're on your way. But yeah, I think that's how I've looked at it. It's just like I always just wanted to be. I want my kids to feel safe and loved. I don't want home to be a scary place for them, but I want them to know that like this is a safe place of love, and so
Mm,
that's how I looked at it. And I guess I hope that that just translates into like most actions, whether they're
yeah.
like from the standpoint of a father or a mother or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
know. It
No.
sounds so like woke.
No, what I love about it is that you just, what you describe is, I think, probably what a lot of us, want to be and try and be, and a lot of us fail on this every day because we're just trying to deal with all the shit that is coming our way, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I suppose, like, to be, to give our kids all the love and the care and attention that we want to give them, is we have to look after ourselves as humans. We have to take time for us because um, we we live in a world where um, it's different, and that's okay. And but we need to adapt to that world, and we have to have different measures. I feel
Mhm.
as dads as well, different measures for us to kind of navigate through this world. Um, and looking after ourselves. And I talk about this with all the dads because I think it's an important to hear how dads do look after themselves. And um, I don't think I knew how to look after myself. I'm still learning how to look after myself. Give myself time,
Yeah.
give myself some space, me time.
Hmm.
How do you do it? What do you do? What do you do, Andy, to give yourself? I say the word sanity because I
Mm.
think that um, it describes for me my I, for my sanity.
Mm.
It's I do particular things. I try and do particular things. What can you share with us, like
Yeah.
things that you do to kind of
Yeah.
keep your sanity?
Sure. Yeah,
And you
absolutely.
said
And I,
therapy. You said therapy actually,
yeah,
which I
therapy.
appreciate you being honest about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a once I was a once a weeker. Now I'm and then I went to once every other week. Now I'm actually down to once a month, which is really good. Like that means that I've made progress, right? And I'm happy with
Absolutely.
that. And I will always be willing to go back the other direction if I feel necessary for that. But I think mentally it has helped me immensely. And I think a lot of that was, you know, we had Riley, we had this diagnosis, we had all this going on, and then COVID hit,
Mm,
and that hit like 3 months after she was born.
yeah.
And
Right.
so
Yeah.
then we go into shut-in mode, and I became her physical therapist because we were doing physical therapy over Zoom. Veronica became her speech and hearing therapist because we were doing that over Zoom. And so like every day of our life was waking up, like doing therapies, then just hanging out as a family because we were working and staying at home, and then like bed, and like rinse and repeat. And like it got like scary, and it got like, Groundhog Day and all this stuff. So when I finally entered therapy, a huge part of that was, my therapist saying like, yes, you guys both need to carve out time for just you guys, right? And like
Mm,
take time to do things that you like to do, and understand that that's okay. And you don't need to feel guilty about it. And I still feel guilty about just spending time by myself, right? But not nearly as much as I used to. Because I also want to spend like every waking moment with my baby. Like my kids are wonderful. I love them. Like, right. But at the same time, you need to do that stuff for yourself. And I think there are few times that I'm more present than like some of the things I do for fun, like hobbies. Like I'm going fishing on Thursday at our lake in Michigan because it's going to be warm. It's going to be the first time I'll get out this year. And Veronica's like, yeah, like go overnight, go spend the day. I'll be back before the kids get back from school. And I am when I'm on my boat and I'm fishing, like I am absolutely present. I'm not
mm,
thinking about work. I'm not
Yeah.
thinking about like therapies. I'm not thinking about like what the next activity we have to get to is or any of that stuff, right? Or like what Riley's life's going to look like in 30 years, right? Like none of that stuff is there because I'm just like focused in this present moment. And it's good. That's healthy. That's like super healthy. It's not that you shouldn't
It
be
is.
thinking of
Yeah.
those other things. Those other things are massively important. And trust me, they are in my head all day, every day, like constantly. Like I, I am,
Yeah.
it's, there's a lot going on up here all the time, but being able to take those moments for yourself, whatever your hobby is, right? For me, it's fishing and golfing. Like, and when I can take
Mm.
those moments and do those things, and then work on being present in them. And that sounds like a funny thing, but like that was some of the things, that was one thing I worked on in therapy, was trying to be present in those moments and being present in moments with my kids that are fun and should be, right? Because there's so
Mm.
many times when I'm not, or I catch myself looking at my phone, or I'm thinking about all the other things that we need to be doing, and it's like, no, idiot. Like you drop them off at daycare and you got work, like you get 2 hours with them at night, like take the 2 hours, like be present, be there with
Mm.
them. But again, more importantly, I think is just in those moments by yourself when you're supposed to be taking that time for yourself, like do it and be in it and be active, um, mentally and physically, and whatever it is that you're doing, even if it's like a spa day or whatever, like just
Yeah.
be in it because you don't get a ton of those moments, and it's important. And I think it does help. It helps you not be resentful of everything else that's going on, right? And
Yeah.
thankfully, we're we're at least, knock on wood, we're hitting kind of the downslope of like specialists and therapists and all that stuff. Like we're settling into a pretty good groove of like normalcy, like pretty typical life activities and behaviors, right? We have speech once a week and OT once a week. That's like an hour. Okay, fine. But like we're not seeing specialists every 3 months anymore. We're barely seeing them like once a year. So
Yeah.
it's like you're getting out of
Yeah.
that that hamster wheel that
Intensive
you
kind
kind of,
of
yeah,
hamster kind of.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And and not everyone has that opportunity to be on that kind of hamster wheel.
No,
Um,
we're so lucky. So
yeah,
lucky.
and it comes with a lot of mixed emotions, doesn't it? Because when you're there and you kind of find yourself being like, okay, so okay, I'm not alone. But then I'm interested to hear what it looked like for you as the dad, because I guess what did it, when you went to these therapies and OTs and all these kind of places, um, what did it look like? What were did you have other dads around you?
Yeah, right. You not a lot. um yeah, so I try to be really active with the girls, and I try, Veronica and I have always tried to have as close, not like we don't measure it like 50-50, but we want to
Yeah,
be a partnership, right? Like this
yeah,
is an equal opportunity parenting organization, right? And 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 so I think like, I want to take Riley to swimming sometimes, but so does Veronica. So like we rotate who does that. And like when Charlie gets into activities, we'll do the same thing. And so when I go to therapies and stuff, I don't know if it's like, I wouldn't say surprise, but it certainly is like it's not a regular occurrence to see a whole ton of dads there. And then
what do you
at
say?
least,
What's the percentage? Would you say? Let's be real, because I think we need to hear this. What like
yeah, I think probably 15-20% of the people, like, so like when I took Riley to speech yesterday,
yeah,
and there's probably, maybe 15 kids roaming in and out of the various like rooms and then in the waiting room and all that stuff, and I was one of three dads there, and
mm,
all the rest were moms. Which, I mean, again, don't know the circumstances or whatever, but yeah, we tend to be on the lower end of things, like, you
yeah,
know and I don't know if that's I don't know. I don't know if that's like just a function of some of the old school nature of the way that some relationships work, right? Like we have friends whose relationship is definitely that very old school 1950s, like man works, wife is at home, food is on the table when he gets home type thing. That's not us, right? Like, and
mm,
not how we do it. But I could see in like that family how like the wife is going to do everything. She's going to do
mm,
all the therapies, and she's going to, not that that's right. It just kind of is. But I guess what I would say to any of the dads that are listening out there is like, I would encourage you to get involved. It was so satisfying when Riley took her first steps because like I was such an integral part of making that happen. Like I have videos literally from soup to nuts of me and her like making her go from nothing at all to crawling to sitting up to walking, like all the
Mm,
way through from 0 to 18 months, like how to do it, and me and her at home doing it. And like I'm super proud of that because I was in there doing it because her physical therapist couldn't. And like I wasn't going to put that entire burden on Veronica because Veronica was doing speech and she was doing hearing stuff, right? Um, and and yeah, so I would just encourage anybody, like, get involved, because if you are lucky enough to have access to therapies and all of that, one, do it. But if you are going to do it, it's going to take a lot of time. And
mm,
I like spending time with my kids. So if that means that it's spending time with them at therapy, like, so be it. Um, I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll learn some things along the way too, right? I think that's the
absolutely.
other thing is so many of the therapists, when Riley would make progress, they would be so happy and so thrilled. And she would make a lot of progress, pretty fast at times, depending on what it was. And they were like, we're just really happy that you guys do stuff at home that we ask you to do. Right. Like
Mm,
so many people just, they like the 1 hour therapy that they do a week. They're like, okay, that's the 1 hour therapy. And like, you move on.
mm,
And it's like, you do you, right? Like that's your kid. It's your family,
yeah.
your life, like whatever. We wanted to give Riley access to independence as quickly as we possibly could,
Mm, mm, mm,
right?
mm,
Through movement, through speech, through all of those things. Independence for her, in our eyes, besides just love and happiness, is the most important thing that we can provide her. And as close as we can get her to being as independent as she wants to be and is capable of, we want to make that happen, right? um and I understand like that's not everybody's outlook and all that. This is just me talking here, but for us, that was always asking in therapy, okay, like what did you work on with her today? What can we work on at home before next time? Right. And that's
mm.
not like that we're like doing military drills here or anything, but like if you have like an extra 20 minutes and you're sitting around on the carpet, like there's some cool like physical therapy stuff that you can do with like toys and things, and it's kind of like playing,
Yeah.
right? But you're helping your kid make these steps and move
Mm,
along in their process. And so yeah, I don't know, just I like participation, that's all.
yeah. I'm into like it's interesting talking about this because again, I think that the experience I have here in Japan and what we went through with Jamie and kind of the physiotherapies and things like that, I think it's so different to what it's like outside of Japan. Um, and the aspect of kind of the dad kind of involvement and the network, kind of creating a network. And you said that, like, just yesterday, you said you went to, sorry, which one did you go to just the other day? You said
Speech.
speech, right?
Yeah.
And so you went in there, and like, there was three dads, I think you said.
Hmm.
Um, did like, did you feel that because mums tend to be better at kind of striking up that conversation?
Hmm.
They can sit in a waiting room and be like, "Oh, like how old, like your daughter, like how old is she?" Like that conversation that goes on.
Yeah.
We as guys maybe don't do that.
No. I'm terrible at it. Uh,
what what's why do you think that is? Why do you think that we? Because you're in that world. You're in a similar world to that other these other guys in that waiting room.
mhm, mhm.
Um, what do you think prevents us? I don't know. I'm assuming here. Did you say hello? Did you kind of indicate? Did you?
No, not
I'm
really. I mean,
yeah,
it depends. I guess it depends on the situation, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not really. Not really.
Um, I suppose every situation is really different because sometimes it doesn't the environment of saying, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" That is
Yeah.
not just going to go down, right?
Yeah.
Um, is it? What's your take on kind of why dads don't do this? Why don't we do this?
Yeah. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I think. I've always been hesitant as it is just just to get quote set up with another man friend, right?
Mm,
Like because you know, I don't have a ton of friends, like close friends, right? I have a large network of acquaintance people that I would consider acquaintances that may consider me a friend,
yeah.
but like, I have a small group of who I would consider like good, true, trustworthy friends, right? Um, and so I think like for me, it's just there's always a natural standoffishness because of my nature. And I don't know if like that's just true of most guys. Like I don't think a ton of guys are like overly friendly to like go strike up a conversation with another guy at like, PT or whatever. Because it's funny you should say that. Like there was a mom and a dad talking that definitely didn't know each other, right? And
Right. Okay.
their kids that were in the waiting room were running around, and I don't know, they probably had some commonality, whether it was school or something. But so they were chit chatting, but like, yeah, I was sitting by myself, and that third dad was like sitting off at another table and like, the atrium area, and just kind of being away. And so I don't know. I think there is that kind of natural standoffishness, and but we've also been introduced to so many other families and like couples and things through like various like Down syndrome networks and people that we know. And you talked to Chris on your one
Yeah.
podcast, like how that just 6 degrees of separation through a friend of ours, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and you end up meeting these wonderful people that you'll know forever now, right? um and so like in that sense, I think it's like if there's like a personal connection there, I'm like more than open to meeting somebody. It's
Mm,
like somebody's vetting somebody. Like our physical therapist introduced us to a couple that she had worked with for a few years with their son, who had Down syndrome, has Down syndrome. And like right after she met us, she just figured we would hit it off with them just personality wise. So she's like,
right.
hey, she's like, it's great that like you guys both have kids with Down syndrome. You can talk about that. She's like, but I really think you would like them as a couple. And we do. And we've hung out with them multiple times like since then. I don't like call up the dad to like go get beers or whatever, but like
Why not
we'll
though?
like,
Why? Okay, yeah, Andy, I'm not.
but like we'll
I'm
like,
not accusing of this, but
yeah,
what? Like what? Because you're in the same world,
yeah.
Andy, and I like to kind of talk about this because it is. I feel it is a part of like it can be an important part
Hmm.
because as dads we feel. I think we are. Well, I'm going to say it. We're a minority because we
Yeah.
and a minority as in like we are not seen as much in the situation, which is why I do this podcast
Yeah.
because I want to be. Um, I'm now in a place where I can talk about it, and I want to hear other dads talk about it, and I want other
Yeah.
dads to hear us talking about it because
Yeah.
that shit's real, and that
Yeah.
is. Um, and the more if we talk about it and we have those conversations with other dads and listen to other dads and feel like we can just let our guard down
Hmm.
and have a chat to these guys and have a beer with these guys and just be
Hmm.
like, you know. So I think that's really important. So I suppose, going back to that question, it was like, is it what's the reason that you feel that you can't go have a beer with them and like is it just like you just don't have that kind of connection? Is it, or is it something
Yeah,
more that
I guess it's not that I can't
extra
go have a
connection
beer
maybe?
with them, or yeah, or that I wouldn't go have a beer with them. It's just
Yeah,
like, yeah, like I have a ton of friends. Like if I want to go have a beer or something, like I'll go call my friends, I guess, right? Like,
yeah.
I barely
Mm.
I barely see my like really good friends, right?
Right,
Like with the
right,
amount of
right.
time that I have. And so like and it's funny because it's so weird, like this parenting experience that my wife and I have had, not only just the Down syndrome thing itself, but then like being a first time parent, like right in
Mm,
COVID, and like
yeah.
not like there's an organization here in the States called Gigi's Playhouse, and like it's all it
Yes.
is for people with Down syndrome and all that. And like there's one really close, and we were gonna like go and we were gonna partake. We haven't been once because of the pandemic and all that stuff.
Gotcha.
Like so it's like we weren't able to go, it was all shut down and everything. And then we just now like we've moved into like Riley's in preschool and she's in daycare and she's like going to birthday parties, and like we have like all these other things, and she's got soccer, and she's so like our time is just limited as it is. And then we have like family stuff. And so when I do get free moments to hang out with like friends or have a beer, I just elect to go with my friends and who are all like wildly supportive of us and are always asking and checking on us and everything. And
Mm.
I also think that, um, you know, there are like plenty of men's like dad groups for like dads with kids with Down syndrome and any number of other things. And um, I don't I don't know. It's not anything that's I don't it's not something that's ever interested me. I guess like I'd be happy to go and share my story just like this, right? Like, and I want to
Yeah,
help
yeah.
people. Just I don't know like is it just a and this is me just rhetorical questions into the ether, but it's like I've often wondered, like, is it just like dads sitting around like just talking about their kids with Down syndrome and like having beers, or is it like I don't know what it is. Like, it's just like it just seems weird to me, like that we're all just getting together just because we have kids with Down syndrome. Like that's so weird. We have like
I
that's
get you
like
on this, Andy. I
it's like a
absolutely get, and
thing.
I'm so glad you've said this.
It's
And
like when my wife
yeah,
it's like when my wife like meets like she has a good friend at work
yeah,
that she hangs out with all the time and she
mm,
really likes, and then she meets like the friend's husband and the husband like likes golf, and she comes home and
mm.
she's like, you've got to meet Brian, he really likes golf, you guys would hit it off. And I'm like, that's just one totally random thing that we kind of have in common. Like I
That's
don't
right.
know that I'm gonna like this
But the
person,
woman,
right?
but let's be fair to our wives here. They all do this with with the best intention,
Yeah,
because like
100%,
that like
1000%,
you know,
1000%.
so I which is amazing, and they like, we must remember that because they come up with the best
Yeah,
intention. But
totally.
it's sometimes we kind of like um we're like, yeah, that's nice, but that's not that's not what I want, or it has to be on our fucking terms.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep.
Like, and your terms, my terms are different, right?
Yep.
But it has to be on our terms, and that applies to so many aspects of our lives, right? Um, it's it is it's tricky, isn't it? Because we I want to kind of go back a little bit to that, but you talk about like
Hmm.
the groups of kind of you know all these dads with Down syndrome, and you talk about like what do they do? We'll sit down drinking beers, talking about like the kids with Down syndrome. Is I think sorry, my dog is snoring. I don't know if you can hear
No.
that.
We
Is
must be
that
boring. I don't know.
yeah? Well, I mean, like, is it really that
This
boring?
is not this is not a good indicator for view count.
Um, seriously, Abby, stop snoring. Um, is that I I want to kind of try and pick at this because I think it's important to try and, if we can together, kind of dissect it a little bit, because um the I feel sometimes that those groups is we fear I fear going into those groups is that it could be a comparison, maybe like we start comparing,
Hmm.
like who's got what, who doesn't have what, are
Hmm.
you struggling more than me,
Hmm.
um who's who's got it worse,
Yeah.
and I think that's maybe our fear, my fear. I should go my fear on that, because I think that um, as men we're typically very kind of competitive. Women are
Hmm.
competitive as well. So
Yeah.
and maybe we feel that like that's an area where you know going into that kind of world of other dads, that group, is that it might be that,
Hmm.
and it probably isn't even that. But
No.
that's our fear, and the fear perhaps overrides us.
Hmm.
Because mums tend to jump in those groups a bit easier.
Yeah.
Not always, and I always say that's not always, but they do tend to kind of be more out there, and I think it's a it's a guy thing,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we coupling that with different levels of acceptance that we have as guys, where we
Hmm.
are, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes talking to other guys, sometimes yeah, it can kind of touch on those nerves of like, okay, well, he's, you know, has he, you know, he says he's accepted this, and you know, I haven't accepted that, so am I in denial? So it kind of brings up difficult questions for us, maybe as
Right.
dads, that we don't want to deal
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
Um, um, but yeah,
It's
I I think that taking the plunge into a dad network is a very individual thing, and I think it's a bold step for some dads to do.
yeah.
I do think it's that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And go, go for everybody go for what you want to go for, right? Like
Mm,
if it's something that you want to explore or need to explore, whatever it is, like, it's fine. I think I definitely think there's that fear of the unknown of like what this is going to be. And I'm sure it's just a bunch of guys bullshitting about football and soccer and rugby and
yes, I think you're
baseball and
absolutely right about that.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like that's probably what it is. Like that is 100% what it is. Um, but to your point, like I do, I struggle talking with other parents with kids with Down syndrome a lot about Riley specifically, and this is my thing.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
something I'm working on in therapy and all that stuff. But like for all intents and purposes, and from what we've read about like early complications and things that can come along with Down syndrome and all that stuff, like knock on wood to this point, like Riley has it's been pretty easy. Like it has
Mhm.
been we've had to work extra hard at stuff, right? Walking, talking, eating, all those different things, but nothing that was catastrophically burdensome to us,
Mm.
right? And again, that's our position. That's our lucky life that we live where we have resources, we have time.
Yep.
The silver lining to the horridness that was the pandemic was we had 18 months of alone time to literally just mold this child, right? Of physically and mentally and all of that, right? Because we had nothing else to do. We had nothing else to do. And she had nowhere else to be, and we had nowhere else to be. And so, like, circumstance wise, like, she's, from what I would have imagined my 3.5-year-old daughter with Down syndrome to be that night that we talked about, where we were given news that 15 minutes after this child was born that she has Down syndrome. If you snapshotted what a 3.5-year-old with Down syndrome looked like in my head that night versus the 3.5-year-old that I just took to school today,
Mhm.
not even in the same universe
Yeah.
as a human being. And so um, it's like for me when I talk with other families that have kiddos with Down syndrome, it's just always like, I'm afraid. And again, this is a me thing because they may not even be experiencing these things, but it's a me thing of being afraid of being like hearing all of their trauma, hearing all of the bad that they've been through, and
Yep.
them wanting me to then be like, yeah, and it's been or empathize with them, and me just turning around and being like, we didn't have any of that. And
Do you feel guilty, Andy? Andy? Like
yes,
and
yes,
like
1000%.
for
Yes,
essentially like that's a, what? Yeah. And I
thousand
think
percent.
and I think that feeling is probably a feeling that we a lot of us feel. I do think that because we
Fair.
and it's kind of that okay, while we have what we have is over here we have child B, child C, child D, child whatever, and they're all going through. They've all got different things,
Right.
and some are on different scales. And I think it's kind of it's a human feeling, Andy. I think this is a human feeling that, and
Yeah.
I have. I look at. I'll be honest. I I'm on Instagram. I have the podcast Instagram, and I see these children, Down syndrome children, and I'm like, wow, that is very different to my world. It's fucking like light years away from how Jamie is.
Hmm.
Yes, he has Down syndrome, but they have Down syndrome. It looks like it's a totally different thing.
Hmm.
Um, and yes, I feel I kind of think, wow, like my world is much harder than theirs. I'm going to say it.
Hmm.
I look at them and but that's on me, and I catch myself, and I'm like, okay, but like they have they have or they've had other like things that I don't know,
Hmm.
and like so I have to remind myself that I'm only fucking human, like
Yeah. Yeah.
and 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 it's a it's how we kind of the process of that to being like, okay, well, everyone's got what they're dealing with, and I've got what I'm dealing with, and all I can do is just
Mhm.
focus on to what I'm dealing with.
Right.
Um, and it is tricky
Yeah.
because
Well, and it's tricky.
no
Yeah.
one really wants to talk about that comparison that we make. I
No.
don't think because well, you can't make comparisons. Like, well, guess what we do, and I
Hmm.
do, and
Yeah.
um, and we all don't want to do it, but we naturally find ourselves doing it, and we catch ourselves and we hate ourselves. There's the guilt um, of making the comparison. Your kid's worse, my kid's worse, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
um, and then we just come back to our own kid. We're like, okay, and then we'd like look at ourselves and be like, okay, I'll just focus on myself here, and maybe it's because I'm just stressed out at work and I'm kind of,
Hmm.
or I've got financial stress here or whatever. So
Yeah.
there's always kind of like something that's kind of aiding
No,
it.
there's a core problem, right?
Yeah,
That's and that was a huge thing that therapy taught me, right? Like you get angry. The reason you got angry at something over here, some stupid little thing, right, was because of some deeper rooted thing elsewhere. And
yeah.
a lot of times, most of the time, at least for me anyway, it was fear, right? I
Mm.
was afraid of a lot of things. I was afraid of Riley's diagnosis. I was afraid of what her future was going to be, what our future was going to be as a family, right? Like, what does that look like? And I think that that speaks to the fear of wanting to have those kinds of tough conversations with other dads. And I think that's just like for most guys, I think most dads, it's probably a more unnatural thing. I think, you know, it's become more natural for me just after years of therapy and just spilling my guts out to people, like to somebody that doesn't even know me. But I think that, like you said, moms are more apt to jump into those groups and I think share with each other. And I think they very much are open to the empathy and the sharing and all those things. And for whatever reason, like we just aren't. I don't know if it's we're raised to not do that, but like I gotta tell you, like sometimes crying is like a really cathartic thing to do, and it's healthy and it feels
Yeah,
great, and and you got to do it. And whether that's with somebody because you're like bonding in a moment, talking about like the things that you're going through with your kid, or it's just you by yourself, just kind of coming to grips with what you're dealing with in life. And I mean, again, I think it's just this is our shit. Like this is our thing.
hmm
Like everybody's got a thing.
everyone's got their own shit. Huh?
Everybody's got their own shit. Like, everybody's got their own thing. And some days our thing is harder than the other people's things, and some days their thing is way harder than our thing.
Yeah,
And
I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I think that's
and
kind of
I
gives a
think
perspective, doesn't it? Yeah,
yeah, well, I
and
think you nailed it
you
on the
don't
head,
see
right?
that,
Like
you
we're
don't
all
see those
humans
things.
who
Yeah,
just we're all just trying to be most of us anyway, are just kind of just trying to get by, right? And do the
mm,
best that we can, and a little bit more grace every now and again, I think from everybody would be helpful. And knowing that grace is there, right? Because I think knowing that space is there to share and not be judged for it or anything for it, like just to hear that get shared,
mm.
is sometimes all you need, right? Like sometimes you don't even need feedback. You just need to like spill it out.
He
Like,
just needs,
man,
and you just want someone to
I'm
listen.
sick
Yeah,
of therapies and I'm just done with it. And I really
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
wish like I didn't have to take my kid to therapy all the time. Like
Yeah.
that's okay. Like you can have that thought. Like that's a totally normal, okay
Yeah.
thought. And that doesn't mean you resent your kid, and it doesn't mean you're a bad dad, and it doesn't mean like any of that stuff. It just means you're a human being that has thoughts and has feelings, and it's better that you share those things into the world, whether it's at
Mm,
therapy, whether it's with a dad's group, or whether it's just whatever. But just sharing is good. It helps, and
it
it
does.
you
Yeah.
know, yeah, it does. I don't know.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Andy. Like it, it's um, you know, because it's important, like to hear, and I kind of feel, that when we're real about it, when we're actually honest and open about it, is that that's when true connection really happens, right? And it's
Yeah,
like because um, it gives us uh, the stresses that we have as men and women in this are fucking real, and
mhm.
that shit is needs to be like listened to, because if it's not listened to, it can become extremely um, like really bad things can happen to families, and
Yeah,
and I know um, like because communication is like we all talk about how great communication, or how important communication is, right, with our partners and with our spouse and things like that. So it's and it is, you know I come back to kind of, let's come back into like the relationship or marriage, right? um and that takes marriage in a typical situation is uh is difficult, it's tricky anyway, right? Marriage is hard because you're you know you're sharing your life with someone else. Then you have a child, and say it's a typical child, all the attention then goes to the child. But uh, then you act as a factor that that child then needs extra help, additional help. So the load that we carry as a as husband and wife becomes more becomes more tricky for us. How how do you guys do you give yourselves enough time together, just you guys? You and
yeah,
I forgot you, Veronica, is that right? Your
yeah,
wife? Yeah.
Veronica. Yeah, I think that's a really like such a good question, and it's something that we have actively worked on very much since Riley's been born. So we fell very much into routines and lulls and stuff during the pandemic. And our not entire, but the vast majority of our focus was on Riley's health, her development, all those things naturally, our health, staying safe, all those things. We didn't know at the time, like, especially when COVID first hit, she was a baby, like how, susceptible she would be to that and all that. So we were very, very careful. So we were very isolated. So like we went through just kind of a lull of being Riley's parents. And we very much, when we both kind of got back into therapy again and started talking about these things with our therapists and just with each other about how we are Riley's parents and we will always be Riley's parents, but we are still Andy and Veronica. And we were people before she came along, and we will be people the entire time that she is here, on Earth. And um, we want to make sure that that stays intact, and that we as a married couple stay intact because we love each other, and she's still my favorite person. Like she's my best friend, and I don't want that to like go away just because we had a baby, and just because we
Mm.
had a baby with special needs, right? Like that doesn't, it takes time and it takes effort and it takes other, more things. But we just very much were always like, we still want to take time. And so it took a while, but we finally nailed it down to where we were doing two things specifically. The first was one night a week. We were doing a dinner typically on like Friday or Saturday nights at home where we cook together with no phones. So phones go away after the kids go down to bed. And
Love it.
It's and it's just the two of us, and we cook because we like to cook together. So we would cook a meal, we'd eat, and we would just talk, and that would be like our night. And we would it really was awesome. It is awesome. We still do it, and it's really nice to um, spend that time together, not distracted and very present and finding out, just checking in with each other.
Mm,
Um, and then the other thing that we have actively been doing is one night a week, we actually have a specific night independent of each other. So where we just go our separate ways
right.
after the kids go to sleep, and I do what I want to do or need to do, and and it's not that like we can't do that any other night. It's just that most other nights, like we put the kids down, we come down, watch TV together, our shows, whatever, like, kind of catch up on our day and BS and, then we go to bed.
Yeah.
So those nights it's like, she'll go and do like her spa stuff or her knitting or her, whatever she does. And I'll do my own things and my hobbies and all that. And that's been really good too. And so I think the
Mm,
combination of like really trying to do those things together, um, has helped us stay both within ourselves individually and as a couple together. And then you nailed it again, which is just that communication piece. I mean, people say that like, oh, communication is key. Like we are very, very open with each other. Like we don't let things fester. Like if I'm upset about something that she did, like I'm very verbal about it and she's the same way, so that we can like nip little things in the bud before
mm,
they like fester and grow, because we've had things that we've held and grow, and then it boils over into,
mm.
a larger fight than it ever needed to be over nothing. um
That's the thing, because it's always it's down the line. It's the little things that kind of like seem to kind of you know blow things sky high. But what it actually is that because I kind of I heard I was on a someone saying the other day like it's actually we need to talk about the small things. We need to just have those
Mhm.
discussions about small things,
Absolutely.
not the big discussions. Like those can happen as well, but just the little discussions about like general communication. Like so you don't like sugar in your coffee? Like okay, like why
Yeah.
don't you like sugar in your coffee for? Like oh really? Oh, okay, is that why you don't like sugar? Okay, like so
Yeah.
those little conversations like
Mhm.
um help like the general kind of uh dialogue that goes on,
Mhm.
and it allows us to have those big conversations as well. And so the little conversations, which often end up like way bigger than what they need to be, um,
Yeah.
tend to not happen. You know,
Right. Right. Well, and then
and
you need a partner that's like also participating in that and reciprocating that too. Like you don't want to
yeah,
enter into like some giant judgmental space where you're like sharing your feelings and being like open about like the things that are upsetting you or, making you sad or whatever,
yeah,
and then them like not even trying to change, right? And
yeah,
they don't, nobody needs to wholesale change for anybody, but like you need to at least take under advisement what your partner is saying, right? Like, and the things that they're asking you to do or the things that are upsetting them, and like at least adapt a little bit, right?
yeah,
Versus like somebody that's just totally combative about it. And thankfully, Veronica is just, she's way, way more acquiesces to things than she even should with me. She's way too nice sometimes. But for us, it's always been a very good give and take. I'm very lucky to have her. Like I can't speak highly enough of her and our relationship, but we've made an effort to do that. Like
mm,
I don't, we don't, I'm not like, spinning you something here. Like you could come and listen to a conversation in our house, and it is a very honest conversation all the time.
yeah,
Um, but we've made an effort to do that. We make an effort to talk to each other, right? Like
yeah.
without phone, and be eye to eye and like having
I think that
conversations.
is so
Yeah,
important, isn't it?
yeah.
It's so important. It's so
You're
important.
still people.
And I
You're
think
still
as
people.
yeah, exactly right. Um, yeah. Um, yeah. Oh man, what a great conversation,
Yeah. And again,
Andy.
we're lucky we have that infrastructure and the family around us, like that can come and like babysit so that we can just scoot out for like a quick dinner or whatever
Yeah,
on a Friday.
that's
Like
yeah,
I get that everybody's in a different situation. Like I totally understand that. And ours is a blessed one and we're very lucky. So, but we definitely use that because we know that we are lucky in
you
that
got
sense. And like we
yep,
we make that effort. You just make
yeah.
an effort.
Yeah, I think that's key is to actually make the effort, put the work in, put the work
Yeah,
in, and it's like with anything, like you got to put the work in, and you'll get
yeah,
results, right?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um. Uh. What is music? What is does music play a role in your house?
Oh,
Be it,
huge. Yeah, giant. Neither of us are musicians, but we love music. I can't sing a lick. I can't play a lick of anything.
all right.
But we love music, and we've ever since Riley was born, and Charlie now too, our youngest. We've played music for them all the time,
Okay.
dancing and everything. Yeah.
Oh, that is good to hear.
Yeah.
So I have a I have a dad's playlist, and I'll be honest, I actually went on to my dad's playlist the other day. I asked dads to give me a couple of tracks that they
Oh.
like or their kids like, right? And I was like, oh, I want to go and see it. I just happened to, and I looked and it had 0 followers. I was like, okay,
Oh,
no one's listening to the dad playlist.
oh
Like, okay.
no.
So here I am. I'm going to promote it a bit more now. So get in
All
there and
right.
check it out. There's some, if you want to expand your musical horizons, then
All right.
go into the dad playlist. I think it's linked in on my uh, I'll put it into the show notes so people can find it nice and easy. But it
Okay.
is
Perfect.
on there. So can you tell us? Let's start with a song that you like. Okay, let's go with you. So that you just
Okay.
at the moment that's rocking your world, a great tune that you just throwing on the car. Maybe it's just you and you just want to what's the track? I'm gonna
So it's because it's hitting summer, spring here right now. I'm listening to a lot of the band name is My Morning Jacket, and the song is One Big Holiday. So listening to a lot of that. It's a good windows down. Oh, here you go.
there it is.
Good good windows down driving
This
song for sure.
oh this sounds good.
Yeah, it's a fun song.
Oh
Yeah, they're like a Kentucky rock band,
right,
and from Louisville. Yeah,
that sounds
and
actually
yeah,
interesting. I'm gonna listen to the rest of that
they're a
song.
fun band. Yeah, they're fun.
Okay, there we go. I'm gonna put that one straight into the playlist right now. Boom, locking it in. Okay, so that's yours.
All right.
Can you give me one that maybe it's a song that Riley or you have another you have a daughter as well. Sorry, a son,
Yeah,
another
two daughters. Yeah,
two daughters. Sorry.
we call her Charlie. It's Charlotte, but yeah, we call
Okay, right.
her.
Uh,
So they're both listening to Taylor Swift anti-hero right now. Big Taylor Swift fans right now.
here we go. Here we go. Okay,
We are we're not paying for Taylor Swift tickets in this household, by the
there we go. I think everyone might know this song.
way.
Here we go. I know this one. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a first. We
We have
haven't
to
had
make
a
the
Taylor
mortgage. We
Swift
have
on
to make
here.
the mortgage payment the next month. So we can't buy Taylor Swift tickets. So
Oh my goodness me. It's in, man. They're locked in there. Two of those tracks are in there.
that's awesome.
Okay. What are 4 words that uh, describe your life as dad to Riley and your other kids as well, and your wife? What are 4 words?
Oh wow. Uh, 4 words that describe my life with them. Blessed. Um, love. Fun and scary.
Mm, awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man. I love those. Those are really wide ranging words that describe
it's
your life.
it's yeah
Yes.
there's it's yeah it's I mean we're blessed because of you know the family that we get to have. So many
Mm,
people want families that don't get to even have them, and we get to have a family. That's number one. So we're even blessed with that, and then we're blessed with everything that the family and friends and the community that we have around us, and um, it's fun all the time. Like it's so much fun being here with them, and every day is just a different, like, thing. Um, Obviously there's so much love. Like there's love here all the time. That's what we encourage. And I say I love you to the kids every day when we
Mm.
leave, when we get up, to my wife all the time. You never know when it's going to be the last time you get to say it to somebody. So, say it. And then it's scary because you love them so much, right? That you just don't want anything to happen to them. You want to give them the best. You want to know that you're doing the best you can and being the best version of you that you can. And that's scary. Um, it's scary loving people that much, or something that much, right? You love things when you're growing up and you love your family, and then you meet your spouse and you love that person more than anybody that you've ever loved in your life. And then there's these kids come along and it's a totally different love than you have for your spouse, but it is this massive love, and you didn't think you could have any capacity for that, and then it happens. And so it gets scary sometimes, right? And I'm terrified of the future, in a good way and a bad way, all the time. So that's kind of how I thought about that in that short time.
For real. Wow, what a great way of describing it.
Mm,
That really, really awesome.
yeah.
So, okay, I want to end on a question, which is, if you could whisper in your ear, give yourself advice when it all happened, um, 15 minutes after birth.
Mm.
If you could, maybe you won't, maybe you wouldn't, I don't know. Would you, and if so, what would it be? If you could whisper in your ear and give yourself advice.
Oh man. Uh, I'd probably just tell myself, I'd just tell myself not to worry and that she's just going to move mountains. That would be it.
Mm.
Because I would believe myself. I would think, I would hope. Somebody else I'd need a little bit more proof, but if I just told myself, just don't worry, and she's going to move mountains, that would probably be all that I needed to hear, you know. And
Awesome.
that would be all the advice that I'd need. And
Yeah.
that, and it's worked out that way, just because it's like that's how it's ended up working out. And it's there's so much the future is always cloudy. We talked about that at the beginning. You just don't No one knows what the future holds for them or their kids or any of that other stuff. But in that very moment, that's probably the most cloudy I've ever had my future be and look in front of myself. And so yeah, the advice that I would have is just not to worry about that, right? And it's going to be okay. And it's um that's because that's my lived experience, right?
Mm.
And I hope that that's the same experience everybody that has a child with disabilities eventually gets to, right? Whether that's as soon as we did or as long as it takes them to eventually get there, I don't know. But I think this whole experience has made me exponentially more empathetic to just humanity and people and individualism, and just people being like, everyone is a person. Everyone is a person. And we need to treat everybody like a person, and we need to do the best that we can to make everybody feel happy and a part of society and safe and all those things. And it doesn't matter whether they have a disability or they don't. It just so happens that my daughter happens to have a disability. And you can see her thing, right? And we know what her thing is. We don't know what everybody's thing is. You can't always see everybody's thing. And so having some sort of clarity on that, and giving myself the advice that piece of it's going to be okay would be huge, because it is. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's
Yeah.
great. It's more than okay.
Yeah. Andy, man, thank you for being honest and open and real
Yeah.
about it. I appreciate it, and
Thanks.
it's there's so much to kind of walk away with from this. What you've said, and I always listen back to my podcast multiple times before I let them go out, and I know that I'm going to be like, man, that was such a great,
Yeah.
we things that you've said. and and I really hope that it will resonate with dads and
Yeah.
also help mums kind of understand how some of their husbands are, because they can like they I know I talked to a couple of mums through Instagram, and um, they they love their husbands, but their husbands, of course, are tends to not, of course, I should say, but tend to take a very back seat and don't
Mm.
talk about what's going on. Um,
Yeah.
so helping kind of get a bit of an insight as to how us weird men operate and what goes
Yeah.
on in our heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so it's great, Andy. I thank you so much for your time tonight, mate.
Thanks
And
for having me, man. This was an awesome conversation. You are doing some amazing work here, and asking all the right questions, and I like thinking hard, and you made me think really hard. So I appreciate it.
awesome. That's what it's all about. It's all about thinking hard, isn't it? And trying to go deep on kind of
Yeah.
why we feel how they are, and finding answers and solutions to that. So awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Yeah.
mate.
Thanks for having me, man.